felt we were in line with a lot of the things that he was advocating, but we realized that this isn't about a candidate. It is about an overall message of true freedom and letting people live their lives as they see fit. And we decided to create an organization to try and influence our city and state government to be, in our eyes, less oppressive.
And what exactly does that mean when you get down to the nitty-gritty? What do you want them to be less oppressive about?
Well, ultimately, we are looking for a decentralization of power. We believe our country was founded on the principles of federalism, and that the most important place for power to lie is as close to the individual as possible. So that means you have the most authority to govern your own life, and you delegate certain powers to your family, you'll delegate certain powers to your city, you'll delegate certain powers to your state. And what we see going on right now is the federal government coming in and greatly influencing both our city and state government. We want to see that decentralized. We want to see our city council stop voluntarily buying into federal money. Same with our state. We want them to take the power back to the state and the city level so that we can have a greater influence on how our state and city is run.
Give me some examples, though. What does that specifically mean? You want the city and state to take less money from the federal government? Why?
Well, let's look at the Department of Homeland Security and the way they are interacting with law enforcement right now. Since 9/11, there's a piece of legislation called the 9/11 Implementation Act of 2007. And basically, that took the 9/11 Commission report and gave it legislative authority and backing, their recommendations to be enacted into law. And one of the things that came out of the 9/11 Implementation Act of 2007 are these DHS fusion centers. And basically, what they do is they merge together all levels of law enforcement. So you're going to have your campus police, your city police, your state highway patrol, your federal agencies, the FBI, CIA, and it even goes up as far as Interpol and international governments, all sharing information with each other. And we don't believe that that's appropriate, because when you have one central authority that is having their fingers involved in every single city law enforcement, if that becomes corrupted, every single city, every single person is going to feel that. Now, if we move to a decentralized model, you can still have information sharing, but it doesn't have to be funded by the federal government. So that way the city and the state can choose how to run their own law enforcement intelligence community. For example, here in Austin, one of the fights they're having, there's a fusion center being implemented, the Austin Regional Intelligence Center, and one of the things they're dealing with is their privacy policy. Now, the local police department created a privacy policy, but they can't present it to the citizens until the Department of Homeland Security approves it. Doesn't that seem a little backwards?
And they can't do that because they are beholden to the money.
They're taking DHS grant money to implement these fusion centers.
Are you necessarily anti-government?
No, I am anti-coercion and I'm anti-force. So I believe that any sort of government should be consensual. I'm a part of government. My family is a government. My organization is a form of governance. I voluntarily opt into those. And if they start behaving in a way that I believe is morally wrong, I can either opt out or I can do something to address it. Right now, what we have in this country is a government that operates on force. And many people morally and fundamentally disagree with the behavior, especially at the federal level, but they do not have the choice to stop funding it or to stop participating in it, and I believe that's wrong.
Are you offended by some of the labels some groups have put on you or some agencies have put on you?
Yes, very much so.
I've seen you got a peace ring on, you got a tattoo on your arm, and if I were never to come here, I would only know you as some kind of a right-wing, scary, pseudo-military group that would like to take over the government.
Well, you know, it's funny because the right wing accuses me of being left wing, the left wing accuses me of being right wing, the libertarians don't necessarily like me because I'm not a party person, the big L libertarians, so everyone has their opinion, but the fact of the matter is I don't believe in the initiation of force. So that means I don't believe in taxation by force, I don't believe in taking force against my government unless it is in defense of myself. So, pseudo-military, potentially, violent group, right-wing, it just doesn't apply. It doesn't apply at all. I don't believe, a lot of right-wingers, so to speak, believe in social control by government. I don't. I also don't believe in preemptive war. So I don't really fit in with any of those labels at all. I believe in true freedom, which is a non-partisan issue. It unites everyone. It's a human issue.
Is there anything that, any group, any movement that then unites you and your group into their movement for a bigger movement? Are you Tea Party? Are you Patriot movement?
I'm all of the above. I'm part of every movement. I speak at tea parties. I am a part of the Ron Paul movement. I try and participate at every single level that I can. Now, that doesn't mean I'm completely in line with any one of those groups, but what I see happening is a coalition that is forming, and people are starting to work together. I call it single issue coalition building. We find things that we have in common and we work together on them. With the Tea Parties, I completely agree with their stances on taxation and the bailouts and the role that the federal government is playing. With the anti-war movement, I completely agree with their stance on Afghanistan and Iraq and preemptive force and the empire building that our country is engaging in. So, would the Tea Parties consider me a Tea Partier? Maybe not. I got uninvited from a Tea Party a couple weeks ago. Would, for example, the 9/11 truthers, would they consider me a truther? No, because that's not one of my main issues. Everyone's got a problem with me, but I work with everyone as well. So.
And the Patriot groups?
They sometimes seem to have a little bit more of a religious undertone than I'm so much interested in the quote Patriot groups, but we do have things that we find in common. The constitutional issues would be a huge one, and taxation as well.
Yeah. Let me quote from you what the SPLC, Southern Poverty Law Center, the Patriot movement has made significant inroads into the conservative political scene, according to their report. The Tea Parties and similar groups that have sprung up in recent months cannot fairly be considered extremist groups, but they are shot through with rich veins of radical ideas, conspiracy theories, and racism. You find that true?
No, I don't. And I've been talking with Heidi Barrick. She's the director of research at the Southern Poverty Law Center, and my organization's name is listed on there, and I've been trying to have it removed. But the racism thing is completely unfair. A lot of people involved in the Tea Party are people like myself who were upset during the Bush administration as well. So for people to say it's because there's a black president is just absolute hogwash. I don't know. I think there's a lot of unfair labeling. I think the Southern Poverty Law Center has a certain agenda that they're trying to fulfill. I also think that they may not completely understand these quote patriot groups that they're accusing of being, paramilitary or racist or potentially violent or having conspiracy theories. I sent an email to Heidi Barrick with links to YouTube footage of the G20 convention and to legislation like HR 645, which calls for long-term detention centers on no fewer than 6 existing military bases, calling for long-term housing, education, healthcare, transportation needs. I sent her links to all of this, showing her all of my stances are based on actual evidence, things that I have witnessed by grassroots footage uploaded onto YouTube or actual legislation either being introduced or enacted by our government. So to say that these are conspiracy theories or that it's based on racism is not fair. And I think people need to start sitting down, taking a deep breath, and understanding that we're all concerned about what's going on in this country. Everyone can feel it. People are hungry, people are scared, and we need to start working together as human beings and stop labeling and dividing.